welcome everyone. My name is Megan. I'm the host of the book club, and I'm here with Edlyn Peña. Hi, Edlyn.
Hi, thanks for having me, Megan.
Edlyn is, I wrote notes because it is a mouthful. She has so many credentials. Okay, she is the director and the co-founder of the Autism and Communication Center at Cal Lutheran University in California. And she is the editor and coordinator of 2 books. The first book is Leaders Around Me, Autobiographies of Autistics Who Type, Point, and Spell to Communicate. That's one book. And we're going to discuss it in just a minute. And the second book is Communication Alternatives in Autism, Perspectives on Typing and Spelling Approaches for the Non-Speaking. And we're going to work with Ms. Peña on her long titles one day. She has the longest titles. It's a mouthful.
That's the problem with academics. Yes.
Oh, that's so funny. Yes, academia. That's what they want to be thorough. Make sure you know exactly what you're getting into. I love it. So, and also Edlyn is Diego Peña's mom. And Diego is the author of Anatomy of Autism. Diego is a non-speaking writer, and he should be on next week for a book club meeting. So I'm really excited about that. And yeah, so this is Diego's book, and Edlyn is Diego's mom. So welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to get right into it. At first, I want to talk about the work you do at Cal Lutheran University and what you guys do at the Autism and Communication Center there.
Awesome. So we actually opened our center in 2016, and it's a university center at Cal Lutheran University. We're just north of LA, and we decided to open the center with my colleague, Dr. Beth Brennan. We really saw a huge need in the community for resources in 2 areas. So one is for non-speaking individuals or minimally speaking individuals who don't have access to communication, whether it's augmentative, alternative communication, or still need more robust forms of augmentative and alternative communication beyond, choices or PECs or other things. Right. So we decided to focus on that area to provide like workshops, trainings, resources, and conferences. The first conference we brought in was really awesome. We had 400 people show up. And for a place like Cal Lutheran, it's a small university, so that was a pretty big deal. We had Larry Bissonette and Tracy Thresher from the documentary Wretches and Jabbers. They're also authors in the Communication Alternatives book, and Tracy's in the Leaders Around Me book. But they just brought in a ton of people. It was awesome. It was a powerful moment. And that was really back in 2016 in April, we were like, we need to create a center. So that's where that was born.
It was almost so validating to you to have that many people.
Yes, because we had almost half of the audience was educators. So this was the first time they had ever seen non-speaking people even present as keynote speakers to share their knowledge, their insights, and they all did it by typing. So people were just completely moved. I mean, they were in tears. I was in tears. And particularly because, as you mentioned earlier, I have a son, Diego, who is non-speaking. And so he's driven a lot of the work that I do. But that has been a huge part of, it's powerful. It's been successful. We've had conferences that are 350 to 400 people. And the second part of our center that we focus on preparing autistic students for college and post-secondary programs. So we actually created the very first transition program in the country for non-speaking and minimally speaking students. And the transition program is basically like a college-bound workshop. We call it the College-Bound Academy. It's 3 or 4 days, and all these amazing students come. They learn about how to get to college, how to access, the curriculum, how to prepare in terms of what accommodations do I need for the SAT, or go to community college, or whatever the options may be.
All of the things.
Yeah, all of the things. It's a lot, right? Even for a neurotypical student to prepare for college. So just to have, you know, our very first College Bound Academy, I did it with Dr. Jody Coker 2 years ago. We had autistic peer mentors. So we had non-speaking autistic peer mentors who were already in college, and they were awesome. They're actually also in the 2 books. So it's Emma Cladis, Samuel Capozzi, Dylan Barmosh. And they basically showed the rest of the students who were mostly in high school what's possible. And in some cases, it was the first time these students had ever heard, like, you can go to college. So it's been really fulfilling to be part of those programs.
Absolutely. And is that just a local program? Are you expanding the program? Is that available to other colleges?
That's a great question. So we do offer them nationwide. The first one, as I said, was 2 years ago on campus at Cal Lutheran. But actually this April, we're offering a College Bound Academy in Maryland and one in Atlanta. And our next goal is to actually put it into an online platform for those folks who might not be able to travel, whether it's because of the cost or even just getting on an airplane. So we want to make this accessible to much broader audience across the United States. And I've even had interest from Canada. I just have to learn the Canadian higher education system.
Right. But I'm guessing that even with that system, I mean, the basis will kind of be the same. I mean, because you're not really even looking at the college, you're looking at the kids and what they might need, maybe different accommodations and different laws. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool.
That's awesome. I know
I love
another book club member that we have, Michaela Ackerman. We're reading her book next. It's called Edge of the Playground. She does, I think that she actually started her blog to not dedicated, but she started her blog to help people, you know, young adults transition to college, because there just wasn't enough stuff up there. I mean, there just wasn't. And so she's a young adult and she went to college, and I think that's where her blog started. Obviously it blossomed into a lot of different things, but I mean, it's much needed. It really is.
Yeah, my PhD is actually in higher education. So I study how to support college students, you know, access college, how to graduate from college. So when my son Diego was diagnosed in 2010, he was 2, and like my professional side of my brain. So, you know, there's my mom's side, my professional side, but I thought, do people go to college if they're diagnosed with autism? I had no idea at the time. And when I looked up the research, there were like 3 journal articles out there at the time about college and autism. Not enough. And that's why I was like, you know what, I really need to start doing research in this area. And now there's definitely more resources. So I'm really excited to hear you're going to be reading that book next.
I'm so interested in that program that you have. And where would somebody find this once you do get it like a broader, once you get it out there to other people? Where would somebody find that? Where would somebody look for that? Would it be on the Cal Lutheran website?
So once we are able to transition the curriculum to like an online platform, so it reaches everybody or anybody who has internet access, then they can go to our Cal Lutheran Autism and Communication Center website. Basically, it's callutheran.edu/autism.
Awesome.
So that's where you can find all the information or sign up for our newsletter to get updates.
Going back to the conference that you had with so many non-speaking autistics, how in the world? I guess you did say that the people from Wretches and Jabber, did they bring all of those people in, or how did you find so many people that weren't speaking but were also going to college? How did you find those people?
So Larry and Tracy actually were not, they were featured as like the stars of the documentary. So they actually did not go to college because they didn't access communication until they were in their 30s, I believe. So they had really led a life of silence until somebody set like tapped them on the shoulder and said, let's try this. Let's try learning to type in their method of communication. But we do locally have a lot of awesome college students who have, you know, gained access to communication, whether they were in middle school or high school. We have like Dylan Barmosh, who's a college student here at Cal Lutheran. Samuel Capozzi is in a nearby college. He's actually graduating in May. He's one of the, you know, handful of people pioneering the way to graduate from college who are non-speaking. And then you might have heard of the documentary called Deej, which features DJ Savarese, and he also types to communicate, and he's an author as well. You might want to bring him on. So yeah, absolutely.
Make that connection for me if you don't mind. I reach out to everyone and I stalk them, and they're like, "Who is this crazy lady that keeps messaging me?" Right. But yeah, I would definitely love to get in touch with him. That would be awesome. Yeah. So he could come talk to us. Absolutely. Okay, so let's talk about Leaders Around Me first. Okay. So this is the first book that we're going to talk about, and I'm really excited to read it. I have most people in here know that one of my kids is non-speaking for the most part, and he is using AAC. He's using Proloquo to go, and he's not really that into it, honestly. If you know, he's not really that into it, but he can use it if he wants to, and he's really into letters now. So he's, you know, I think that he's kind of maybe ready to start typing, or, you know, so we're moving along that path. He's in kindergarten. So I'm really interested in reading this, and I want you to tell us a little bit about it. Who your intended audience is, like who did you guys write this for? Was it for teachers or parents or whatever, and who the authors are, and your process for making the book, everything. I want you to tell me all of the things about this book.
Okay. So I should probably first start with all of the things that I have been doing, like all the things I've been talking about have really stemmed from my experiences as a parent of Diego. And knowing that Diego is in a very unique situation. He got access at a very early age to Proloquo. Actually, we started with that at the age of 3, and I had to fight for that. I had to advocate for that. At 5 years old, he started learning a rapid prompting method to learn how to communicate, spell, and type. And that's also early, like he was 5. And then we built a really strong team around him of all these people who supported him. And so what I realized in meeting so many other families, especially through the center, is that Diego is, you know, one of those individuals who has the resources. He's fully included. He has trained communication partners. And I wanted other students out there to know that they're not alone, like that there are other people like Diego or like them or adults like them who are out there across the world, really, because there's even authors from France and Canada in that book. And I just made a call and I said, I'd love to make this book about your autobiographies. I'm looking for non-speaking or minimally speaking individuals who type, point, or spell to communicate, who are willing to share your stories. There's 45 awesome authors on there. Some of the stories are incredible or beautifully written. They're all like categorized by the kinds of accomplishments that they've made. Like some are authors, some have been in films, some are, you know, fully included in community settings. So they've really done such an amazing job of basically letting people know that just because you're non-speaking, just because you're minimally speaking, of course, doesn't mean that you're not intelligent, doesn't mean that you don't have anything rich to say. And so the intended audience for this book are the autistics themselves, really. And you'll see, like at the end of each autobiography, the 45, there's discussion questions, just like 2 simple discussion questions for people reading it. They're directed to the autistic readers, but of course the secondary and third audience for this book is like family members and parents, and then of course professionals and educators. And I've had educators contact me after reading this book and just want to know, like, I would love to learn more about this, you know, and I didn't know there were 40, even 45, and there's probably hundreds of people out there that we just know about who are communicating in this way.
That's my mom. Hey, Mom.
Hey, Mom.
That is really fantastic. And I love that you made it for other autistic other non-speaking autistic people, not members. They're not book club members, but I think I love that they're your audience, you know, so that they know that, no, you're not alone in this, even though sometimes they may feel like they are alone because of the school they're going to, or I think that's fantastic.
Yes, I think like we have pockets of communities, like so around the Autism Center here in Southern California, there's pockets in Atlanta, there's pockets in Virginia. So there's pockets in different places, but there are people who live in the Midwest and may not have, for example, the community of people to support them. So my hope is that this book reaches everybody so that they know that, you know, there are other people who have faced the same struggles, but who can also, like, you know, navigate all of that and accomplish a whole lot more.
So when a teacher does come back to you and say, hey, I read the book, I really want to know more about this so that I can support my non-speaker, my non-speaking student, where do you send them? What trainings do you send them to? Do you guys do trainings for teachers?
We do trainings for educators and speech language pathologists who want to learn the methods of, these are methods called rapid prompting method, facilitated communication, spelling to communicate. So we offer various trainings to sort of like train the trainer or, you know, train professionals who will reach broader audiences. I also do just consultations as well with, like, I have a team of teachers coming to see me next week who read the book and they said, we'd love to learn more and they want to meet Diego. And so we can just start from the beginning to say, like, you know, one of the hardest things is you usually teach these at an individual level. You teach the child at an individual level. So the challenge really is like, how do you do this for a classroom?
Right, because the growth is too slow. If you're only just teaching one child at a time, we should, there's not enough progress being made.
Yes, and that's the thing with Diego is he goes to school with a communication partner who can meet his needs and tailor, you know, the supports every step of the day, right? And that's how he is included, you know, fully included in general education and honors classes. But without that communication partner, and that's where it's hard because it requires resources, right?
Right.
Without that communication partner, he would not be able to access general education.
And does his communication partner have, is it a certified teacher, or is it a teacher's assistant, or?
She's a dedicated one-on-one aide. So really she's like a school one-on-one paraprofessional or aide, depending on, you know, your school district, whatever they call them. But I refer to her as a communication partner. She does a lot more than that. She's like a regulation partner. She's a emotional support partner. She does all the things.
She sounds amazing. Diego.
Yeah, she's great.
That's great. And also, I do want to tell everyone, I don't want to brag or anything. I'm not trying to brag, but I am going on, let's see, April 18th. I'm going to Silver Springs, Maryland, and I'm meeting up with one of my moderators, Louisa. We're going to go on a road trip. And we're going to the author celebration event for this book. And I'm getting some of my, I'm getting some signatures on my book. Yes, so I'm excited about that. And if anybody's in the Maryland or East Coast area, Northern East Coast, that will be on, April 18th in Silver Springs, Maryland. And if you want to go to that and meet up with us, then just let me know and I'll send you the link because I think it's going to be amazing. Do you know how many authors are going to be there from this book?
I believe there's going to be 6 authors, but I could give or take. And for sure, Larry Bissonette and Tracy Thresher will be there, who I talked about earlier. They're superstars, are hilarious, witty. You're going to love them. And then it'll be like a live panel interaction. You can ask the authors questions.
I'm excited.
And yeah, great.
Okay, let's move on to the second book. I'm not reading the whole title again. I'm not doing it. Okay, so this is Communication Alternatives in Autism. And I want you to tell me kind of the same thing about this book. Who is the intended audience? What was your process in making it? Why did you make it? What is the format? Is it a similar format to your other book? Mm-hmm. Tell me all of the things.
Okay, sounds good.
Go.
So this book actually took me like 4 years to write and coordinate. Do you hear feedback on your end?
I do not.
Okay.
Book clubbers, if you hear like echoes and stuff, let us know so that we can make adjustments. You know, I'm technology challenged.
I just started hearing it, so I'm not sure, but I can keep talking.
Okay.
So yeah, so
do you have your volume up?
My volume, I haven't changed anything since we started, but I can lower it. That would help, you think?
It might help you. I don't know.
Okay, let me see. There we go. Okay. So I really wanted to write a book intended for professionals and educators to learn more about methods in typing and spelling to communicate. Because there's a lot of controversy around it, I wanted to sort of confront those critiques and criticisms head on. And basically, I make the argument that we really should give these forms of communication a chance. Just like in any field, you could be great or really bad at being a speech therapist or occupational therapist, but that's also true for these methods as well. And I think that people who feel like these methods are not producing authentic communication, sometimes they point to the examples of like folks who may not be doing like the most quality type of therapy in that area. And what I argue is there are examples of people who learn to independently type over time. It takes a lot of support. It may take months, years to get there. There's actually a wonderful website I refer to a lot. It's the United for Communication Choice website. There are videos of individuals typing and spelling on there. And some are at the beginning stages. You'll see sort of a progression of where they are in terms of the level of prompting or support that they need. And so I know from personal experience that when Diego started typing, his whole world changed. Like he went, from being presumed incompetent to being presumed competent. I mean, he was tested and then they found out that he knew a lot more than we ever imagined. Like, how do you test a non-speaking child who doesn't have communication, right? I mean, you have to tell them what you know, or you have to write it down.
This is my life right now. Yeah, this is my life. How I'm like trying to figure it out for his teachers, how like trying to build things and make different things. I don't know. Oh yeah, like I did a letter board and I mean, I'm just all over the place with like trying to help help his teachers teach him and assess him. So yeah, I know what you're what you went through.
Yes. And I mean, I think, there's a couple reasons why people don't want to support it or go there. Number one, they've been told that this is like bunk, right? Like that this is not the kid is not actually the one doing the output. It's very influenced by the communication partner. And I talk about this in my book, that influence is possible, but we have to like learn best practices to mitigate that, right?
And this is with RPM or any kind of FC?
RPM or FC, either one. There could be levels of influence there. So you have to, be trained, be supported, practice good practice. And so there might be people who say, no, I'm not allowed to do that. Or there might be people who say, I don't know how to do that, so I don't want to do that. And so we really, like my family, we had to advocate to bring in, you know, people who were open-minded. That's kind of like, now that's what I look for. I'm not even looking for people who are trained in autism, right?
I don't, yeah,
about,
sometimes you don't want somebody that's trained in autism, right?
Exactly.
No.
Sometimes it's not good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then you start with those people who are just like, yeah, I'm willing to try this. I'm willing to learn something new. And sometimes it's hard to find those people, but once you find them, I mean, wonderful things can happen. And I experience it in my own life through Diego. Like, I know that there's so much more possibility for our kids. So I wanted to get the word out to the professionals in this book. The most important part of the book really is that there's 10 autistic authors. They talk about more extensively their journey in first being denied communication access, and then finally securing communication, and then how that changed their lives. So some of them went from segregated special education classrooms to full inclusion. Larry and Tracy, because they got access later in life, now they're like, you know, they can make their own self-determined goals. They can do consulting. They go out and do workshops and presentations. They're also trainers. So you just live such a much more fulfilling life, I feel like. And that's what I want to let people know, that there are opportunities out there, but we're still working on training more people, you know, to be able to help someone like you and your son, right? Mm-hmm. Because not everybody has someone, you know, 5 miles away that knows how to support a student in terms of RPM or FC.
And did you all train with Soma for RPM, or?
So yes, so we started with Soma. We went to see her when Diego was young, and we, again, like, this is another thing, is like having the resources, right, to like fly to another state.
It's expensive.
And so yes, yeah, and I believe, you know, that we really need to make sure that we provide access to underserved communities, or people who haven't had historically the resources to pay $3,000 to fly across the, you know, country and do the workshop and get the training and be introduced to it. And so I think Soma and other practitioners have really tried to expand the training of others to reach more communities. So that is a step in the right direction.
That is how we have common friends on Facebook, because you probably met some of my friends from my area at one of those workshops. Because we have quite a few people in our area, and one of them is actually certified under Soma to train, or to do that. So that's cool.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yes. It's a small world.
It really is, which is fortunate, because it used to be such a big world, and now it's kind of coming together, which is amazing.
Great.
Okay, let's see. I want to ask, and if anybody has a question for Edlyn, feel free to ask. I know that some people already asked questions prior to the event on the questions for Edlyn post. But if you do have any questions, feel free to ask them or say hi or anything, because I know a lot of people aren't as familiar with facilitated communication. And obviously, Edlyn is amazing at all of the knowledge and understanding of that stuff. So I want to talk about you as a mom, and not as Dr. Peña, just you as a mom. What are some things that you've learned as a mom to Diego? And what are some things that you wish you had known beforehand? And maybe if you could go back in time, you would do differently. Yeah. Any reflections that you have? Like, any reflections?
I have a lot.
Yeah.
But I'll try to, keep it brief. So Diego's 12 now. So it's been 10 years since he's been diagnosed. And 10 years ago, autism was less known, I would say. So I really I was starting from scratch. Mm-hmm. And at that time, there was a narrative that, what you do for your child is 40 hours a week of ABA. You do discrete trial training. So that was the message I got, and I went all in, because that's what I do. I just want to, like, hey, early intervention. And there's this like narrative about, you know, I'm embarrassed to say it, but I was like, I was buying into the narrative that your child can recover, quote unquote, right?
Well, that's what they were telling you.
Yes. And I think, you know, if I could go back, I wouldn't listen to any of that. I mean, I regret putting my son through therapies that literally broke my heart, when I saw how they broke his spirit, essentially. And so I think there's of course these camps out there, which I understand. There's anti-ABA camps, there's pro-ABA camps. And I'm of the mindset that there are therapists who are really good. So if I find a company that is willing to work with me on being flexible, learning in a natural environment, reinforcing the child's interests. So I'm more of a naturalistic and holistic and social emotional type of therapy approach. And I've been so fortunate that it took me 4 companies, because that's all that insurance would cover. So this is like the dilemma that parents have. They're hearing that, you know, some ABA companies are not good, and that's also true. Like, there are companies that are not good. I've seen them.
Yeah.
But I had to go through a series of companies who, if I would have paid out of pocket, I would be out almost $40,000 a year. So that's not reasonable. But thankfully, I found one that has experience in other areas, and they're open, and they support Diego as a human being. He's respected as a human being. They support his communication. So I would have done that. I wish I could go back and do that all over again, because we spent like 3 years of like very more like robotic, strict ABA, like old school ABA. And then the second thing that I've learned, and that I would like let other parents know, especially when they get, you know, this news that their child has autism or is autistic, don't listen to just people with like PhDs. Like, I am not an autism expert. I wish that I had read, you know, books, blogs, articles written by autistic advocates. It wasn't until the first book by an autistic author I read was Ito in Autism Land. And I think Diego was 4 years old when I read that. Mm-hmm. Yes, such a good book. Honestly, that book changed my life. Like,
I've heard that from a lot of parents.
Yes, especially if your child has difficulty with communication, it's a game changer. Ito has been a speaker at our conferences in the past, and I realized like the things that Diego must have been going through during these ABA therapies, or, you know, even in speech therapy, where he was like required to, you know, repeat the same thing over and over just to get access to his favorite candy, and he would just break down.
Yeah, that's ABA in a speech therapist's office, right?
Right. So I had to really shift my paradigm, and that's what Ito really helped me do that. And then I started reading other, you know, awesome authors and bloggers, and my relationship with Diego turned a corner because of that. I mean, I started presuming competence. I started talking to him directly. I, you know, made sure communication was at the forefront, like that he could express himself beyond just, I want juice, you know, like that was not enough. So I highly recommend that book, Ito in Autism Land. Maybe you could have him also as a future speaker.
I would love that. Honestly, I want all the speakers, send them all my way. Yeah, I would love to. I definitely would love to reach out for him. I actually, the first non-speaking blogger / author, I didn't know he was an author back then, but I read one of his articles, and it was about how he felt trapped all the way up until a certain age. I mean, I'm not sure of the specifics on anything. I do have this book because this was at the top of our list last time, so I went ahead and bought it. I haven't read it yet, I'm reading along with the book club, so I'm not ever ahead of anybody. I'm always pretty much behind, and they all have to wait on me. But he talked about how, you know, he was going through school and they were like trying to get him to add 1 and 3. And when he already knew how to do that, but his finger wouldn't push the 4, it would go over here and push something else. So they just presumed that he was incompetent instead of presuming competence. And then he talks about, you know, kind of breaking out of the prison of, like, when he found communication, and he started with RPM as well, right?
Yes, I feel like you're talking about Ito's book.
Oh, well, it was an article I read that I think it's on his website. Maybe he just like did a condensed version for, you know, for the book. But
that could be him.
That was the first time that I, as a parent, was like, well, hang on a second. So I need to get him some communication. So then that's how all of that started. Yeah. So
right.
This is,
I think that, no, I was just going to say, I think the thing that I realized, and I know, like, it was an epiphany for me, like it was like a light bulb went off when Diego was 3, because I you know, my PhD is in education. I know how important inclusion is. Like, that is a really strong value for me, for Diego to be fully included in a, you know, general education environment if possible. But I realized, like, how could he fully be included without being able to communicate, right? How can you participate in class? How can you interact with your peers, answer questions from the teacher? So that's why I place so much emphasis on reading Ito's book and following his trajectory, because then that really did set sort of like the pathway for Diego to then get access to all these other opportunities.
I'm reflecting in my head, this long pause. I'm just thinking and thinking. All I do is think all day. Just think. Thank
No
you for
problem.
that. Yeah, it's a lot to think about when you're starting out. You know, we're starting our journey with Proloquo, and, you know, communication needs, which Proloquo is amazing, but our communication needs are outgrowing, you know, a picture. They are starting to outgrow that, and I'm at the point right now where I'm trying to find the next step and the right step. And of course, like we just talked about in our book club conversations with Dr. Prasads' book, and he says, you know, which choice do I make? Are we gonna mess everything up depending on which direction we go in? And that's where I'm kind of at right now in my own journey with Jay. Because you know, you just don't know which is the right direction to take. So,
and that's the difficult part, is every professional has their own opinion or own expert, you know, advice.
I don't want an expert.
And it becomes so overwhelming as a parent. You're like, what do I do? You know, what direction do I go in? And Dr. Prasads, I'm so honored that he wrote an endorsement of my book, Communication Alternatives. So I was just really excited about that, because he is a huge influencer in the field of autism, and he does it right. Sorry?
Thank goodness for that.
Yeah, thank goodness. Yeah. So I think, you know, with Diego, he started with Proloquo, and he did use the symbols and the icons to request things. And then I talk about this a little bit in the Communication Alternatives book, that there were things he wanted, but there weren't pictures, right, already programmed into the pages. So he would press, he wanted to see Charlie Brown. And so he would press Brown DVD. Or, you know, he wanted to, like, he was really like thinking about it, and how do I get my needs met? And there was a book he couldn't find, and he pressed ABC Winnie the Pooh book. It's like, this kid is like almost creating sentences with his icons, which is eventually what you want. But then I started thinking, like, one of the things I learned from the authors that are in my books, and they're all awesome, and I couldn't have done these books without them, obviously. But Larry Bissonette has this awesome quote, and he says, With symbols, I can order from a menu. So you're at a restaurant, you can order from a menu. With 26 letters, I can type out the menu. I can create the menu. And I'm like, boom, you know?
That just gave me chills. I'm like, I have chills on my arms.
We want for everyone. We want everybody to have the agency, to be empowered, you know, to have access to that level of, like, you know, to express your thought and not be stuck and silent.
And I do want to say that for those listening, that Proloquo to Go was life-changing for us. I mean, it literally changed our lives from no communication and crying and frustration and presuming incompetence. I mean, I didn't presume incompetence, but I didn't know much about it back then, to him teaching us. So Proloquo to Go, I'm not knocking that at all. I love Proloquo to Go. It has been life-changing for us. I mean, yeah, it has been. I mean, we went from not knowing whether he even understood what a shape was. You know what I mean? Like, he wasn't even able to tell us, you know, this is back in preschool, so they're doing shapes and colors, to him being able to say, that's pink, you know, and us understanding, yes, he is getting it. Okay, so let's do something else. So any type of communication is better than no communication.
Yeah.
And more communication is better than some communication. I mean,
that's the takeaway message.
That's my expert opinion.
Yes, absolutely.
Let's see.
I see your mom is typing questions.
Yeah. When I read that book, I was so struck by his enjoyment of the poster in his room that he could read. Then they took it down because he was perseverating on it.
Is that Ito's book?
Yeah, she read both of Ito's books, or I don't know if he has more than one, too, but yeah.
He has two.
Jeez.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah.
My blood pressure is going to rise, Mom. What is your background, your PhD? I think that you did mention it earlier, but she was late to the party. Let's see.
Okay.
Diego influenced your path in education.
So I got my PhD at University of Southern California, and I'm from California, so wanted to stay close by with my family, and I actually got my PhD in higher education, and I was very interested in supporting students of color to graduate successfully college, and so my PhD was actually in that area. I wrote my dissertation on how faculty members can be better instructors and advisors to Black and Latino, Latina, Latinx, the language changes, students. And then I was a faculty member for maybe 3 or 4 years when Diego was diagnosed. So my work up until that point, and I'm still very passionate about making sure that students of color and underserved students get services, get resources. My research sort of shifted to autism, although I do have intersections of those two areas.
That's right. You have a task force, isn't that right?
Yes, we just started a task force. So through the Autism and Communication Center at Cal Lutheran, that was, again, because these are two areas I really care about, making sure that communities of color have access to quality therapy and communication, that we, I want to think of ways of how our center and beyond our center, how can we provide access to, like, this College Bound Academy that we're offering, workshops and training that will serve marginalized communities and neighborhoods. So I put out kind of like a call and invite, and we have 6 students who type and spell to communicate who make up the task force, and they're the ones driving the conversation. I just ask questions, and we've had our very first meeting almost 2 weeks ago. It was awesome. I need to do a better job of, like, typing out the notes and, like, sharing their brilliant ideas. But we talked about, like, they brought up things like, okay, financial resources, of course, and educating parents who are, may not have English as their first language. So there were a lot of different ideas that we thought about. How can we work with schools who are open to this, or with professionals who are open to this, to reach communities and audiences that may not have heard or even can afford, or whatever it may be, afford these sorts of therapies. So I'm excited about it. We're thinking about getting the task force together in person, because it was like all via Zoom. And they range from like teenage to young adults. All Latino or Black students are on this task force. So it's really cool.
That's awesome. That is awesome. That's exciting too. That's good work.
Yeah. I think that I could be wrong, but I think that we're the first sort of like committee or task force that's been formed of non-speakers who are also people of color, who are trying to, help drive some policies or practices with our Autism and Research Center, at least through our center. And there may be more out there. I've just not heard of them. But I think that intersection is so important to address as well.
I agree. I definitely agree. Actually, I just bought this book. Have you read this one?
I've heard of it. I haven't read it, but I know I will join your book club to read it with you.
Right. Yeah. When we start reading
an anthology. Is it an anthology with different authors, or?
Let me look. I think so. I think that it has lots of different authors, and then it has different sections of topics, I think. But yeah, lots of different authors. Obviously, it's so big.
Yeah. There's, that's another thing people can think about, is following like Twitter handles or hashtags, I should say. They have like autistic while black, autistic while brown, just so that people can really educate themselves on the sorts of issues that are facing the communities and how we can be supportive in those instances.
Because that intersection does, it has a multiplier effect. I think I talked with Steve Silverman about that. And, we have something going on in Virginia right now where a Black autistic person just got sentenced to jail for 50 years and for an accident. And I don't want to misspeak here, but when the police officer pulled up to him, he was Black first. He was a Black young man in Virginia, which is not a very safe place to be. And then compounded by his limited communication skills and anxiety and other things with being autistic. And it is such a multiplier effect, and it made him so much more vulnerable. So I think that it is important to be aware of those, of that intersection. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. The challenges are sort of layered, right? When you start adding different identities into the mix. So it's something that we should all keep in mind, because, as you know, every autistic is different. And then you add the other pieces of, race, ethnicity, income, all the things that may affect the opportunities that that you have access to, or the way you're treated when you're encountered by a first responder, those kinds of things that we really need to educate the community on.
Angelina says it's so important to talk about this. I knew Louisa would chime in. Megan, Angelina, and I have talked about the serious lack of representation in most well-known organizations that deal with autism or fields that often work with autistics, like speech language I'm like the worst reader. Speech language pathology, etc. Yeah, we do talk about that intersection and the lack of representation a lot. We do talk about that a lot.
Yes. Yeah. And I feel like we're just at the brink of really addressing it. Like we're just at the beginning of that. And one of the things that I've been fortunate to do is I have a colleague actually in the DC area, Dr. Cecilia Braunbauer, and she's from Chile. And she does this really cool neurodiversity workshop with speech language pathologists in Chile. And so she's brought me and some other colleagues in to talk about our books, talk about all the things you and I are talking about, and to give them like just a different perspective, because these are all like brand new concepts and ideas, even internationally.
Yeah.
And in countries where, they may not have books like the ones that, we're talking about today. So it's really fun. It's great. And I hope it's making a difference.
It's good work. It's great work.
Thanks.
I'm so happy to talk about all of the things. This is so exciting. Okay. I'm going to ask you one more question because we're almost coming to an hour, and I try to tell, everybody that it'll be an hour or less, so I don't hold you here all day. When you get into all these conversations, it just keeps going and going. You could talk all day.
Yeah.
So, all right. So my question is, if you could give advice to parents and teachers of newly diagnosed autistic children, what would it be? And it could be, it could be two different answers.
I do have two different answers, and they're related. They're related because it's what I do for Diego now, and it's what I do for me. And I mentioned this earlier, but you have to read works by autistic authors. You have to go be a part of the community. Bring your child to those, whether it's like finding your people, right? Like one of the things about the Autism Center is we have socials, we have the conferences that bring in autistics to be with each other and make sure that they have time to build community, build rapport. And because of that, my son, for example, has mentors who are autistic. He calls Samuel Capozzi his big brother, and Samuel's graduating from college this year and uses a letterboard. So
fantastic.
Finding your people. Sorry?
That's fantastic for him. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think that, trying to find those connections, those relationships to support your child and to support each other, even as parents, right? But really making sure that you're being educated by autistics. Like I always make sure whenever I put on a conference that our keynotes and that many of our presentations are led by autistics, that they're being paid for the work they do, whether they're speaking or, whatever that looks like, contributing to the center in some way. And so I think that's the advice I would give is read and make community with the autistic community, just to support yourself and your child along the right trajectory.
Right, because your child is a part of that community. They are the autistic community, and they're just younger.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's right. What Steve Silverman said. He said, you look at adult autistics and you think, well, my child is nothing like them. And he said, well, no, they weren't like them when they were 10 or 5 either. They grew up and so were your, God willing, so will your child. So, they are a part of that community. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Our kids change, right? I mean, they're, my child is 12 and says cuss words on his letterboard. He didn't do that 5 years ago, but here he is saying F, X, Y, Z, and he will.
You're like, I know, right?
Do that as an adult. So yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Was that both of them?
Yes. That was both of them.
And parents.
Yes. Yeah. It was really to read the autistic authors' works, books, leaders around me, whatever that looks like, Ito and Autism Land, and then, find your people, get support. That all the professionals have different opinions. It's very overwhelming. Listen to your gut.
That's a good one. Listen to your gut. I think we've been talking a lot about that in Barry Prasads' book. We're finishing that up this week. I promise, guys. We're finishing it up this week. I promise. We have one more chapter to go. I'm going to read it today. But
awesome.
Yeah, he talks a lot about that of listening to your gut and how parents lose their way and then they think that the professionals know more. And what we learned from Neurotribes was that those professionals That's all I can say is nah. They don't. You know,
Yeah.
they have been taught by the people that taught them, and the people that taught them were not actually taught. They just made it up as they went along. I'm summarizing, of course, but you know,
Right.
and that's where we're at now. You know, we're trust your gut, trust your mom, your dad gut, your teacher gut, and do what's right. Yeah, do what's right for those kids.
Yes. Yes.
You're gonna make me have another reflection moment.
There's a lot to reflect on. So
there is.
I get
there
it.
Is. I really appreciate you coming to talk with us, and I wanna put the books up here again. I'm gonna put the links up to where you can get them on Angelina said nah.
That was great.
I'm gonna put the links up for Amazon, and I'm sure that one of these books will be on our next poll, or one or both of these will be on our next poll for deciding on books. Those of you who are like joining us and you don't know, our next, so this is our next book that we're reading, which is very short. It's by Michaela. It's called Edge of the Playground. Michaela would be a good person to contact, Edlyn. She's fantastic.
I'd love to meet her.
And hung out with us, and she'll be on, I think on March 28th, she's going to do a book club meeting with us, and I love talking with her. So this is our next book, and it's very short. And then our following book is Loud Hands, which is a book written by Autistics, and I think that it's more of like an anthology. Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
And I'm trying to get with Julia Bascombe, who is the editor, I think, or coordinator.
Yes, I think she edited the book.
I'm going to try to get with her and see if she's not too busy during April to talk with us about her book. And
awesome.
So then after this, then we'll be wide open, and I'm definitely hoping that one of your books will be up there. And
awesome. And don't forget, I sent you
giveaways. Is that right?
Yes, that's exactly what I was just going to say. So they'll be coming to you in the next couple of days. You have a signed copy of Communication Alternatives. You have 2 signed copies of Leaders Around Me. And you'll also, I know Diego will be on here too. He has also sent his 2 signed copies. So however you
giveaway time,
select your folks to win.
We love giveaways in the book club. We love them. Yay. Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much for that. I mean, thank you for everything. Thank you for hanging with us. Thank you for interacting with us. Thank you for donating to our giveaways. Thank you so much. I think that
it's my pleasure.
I appreciate you coming for offering some suggestions. Yes. And all right. So I'm going to go